As you know, it's probably the card that'll double up Matthew Stevens. So
20,000.
he's got to hope. Oh,
Stevens.
He's going to go for it.
That was
Call.
a tickler. He said, please call, and McCrearick has obliged. And there's a few cards in this deck that could keep this hand going on, but that wasn't one of them, unless John McCrearick decides to try and bluff it. I don't think he's calling. King high.
Call.
Oh, he has. And the
All in.
call was instant. McCrearick announced a verbal all-in, Gary Jones, but with a full house, Stevens was going nowhere, and this is one instance where that trap was set well and sprung to good effect.
Absolutely. We've said as long as John McCrearick doesn't run into a hand, he's probably going to end up winning this tournament. What he's done is he's ran into a hand as Matthew Stevens has flopped his set and trapped him beautifully. The little check on the flops make him think he's weak, and he's now managed to get all of the chips off Mr. John McCrearick and managed to double up.
And how serious was that? And was that inevitable? Is a person who bluffs as often as McCrearick bound to get caught?
Not when you're playing short-handed. We're only down to 4 players here, and the way he was playing is he could very easily have got to such an insurmountable lead that by the time someone found a hand, they could be too far behind. So
Great stuff. Looking at that one more time. When the flop came down, Matthew Stevens was in 7th heaven, the Welshman with a full house. He induced McCrearick to bluff on the river, but 3 9s and 2 3s were always going to beat a pair of 3s only, and Matthew Stevens has gone from 2nd to 1st, I do believe. A whole lot of chips going Matthew Stevens' way. He has doubled through, doubled his chips, and John McCrearick not out of this by any means, Gary, but the momentum all with Stevens now.
not just that, we've also seen a hand turned over from John McCrearick where he was obviously bluffing. So the other players are going to know that that's part of his game now and be absolutely certain about it. And he's now starting to look a bit more vulnerable.
Well, it hasn't rattled John any. He's still cool as an absolute cucumber. And there were a lot of hands that Matthew Stevens could have folded there. I mean, was it a terrible bluff? Or
no, not at all. You know, like I said, it's one of those hands where if Matthew Stevens hasn't flopped such a big hand, he looks like a genius for making the play. But as it happens, he did flop that hand, and now he looks a little bit stupid. But it's a gutsy play, and he's done well.
fine line between stupid and genius in poker, but after 46 hands, Matthew Stevens looking like the genius. He's in first position. Cards are out now, 4 players left. But Gary, we could be down to 3 very soon because Rod Harrington on the big blind for 10,000 and he's only got 2,000 back. It'll be a question of who wants to take Rod Harrington on. And Ed Giddens seems up for the task. Harrington has to call with any two. We've got an all-in situation here.
This is basically the situation that Rod Harrington's left himself in. Managed to let himself go down very low, hasn't took a stand early, and basically he's now just got to gamble with the 2 cards he's left with.
29,000 in the pot. 24,000 in the pot, excuse me. And Rod Harrington is all in, and in a bit of a spot here, Gary. What are the odds with these 2 hands?
Well, you've got to make Ace-7 favourite, and he's probably going to win it about 11 out of 18 times, so it's pretty good for the Ace-7 now.
And now even better, because unless an 8 or 9 comes on the turn or river, Rod Harrington will be walking dead man. Turn to come needs to be an 8 or 9. That's not it. And Harrington, who's picked up a straight draw, the 10 won't help him because it will give Ed Giddens a higher straight. Any 8, any 9, 6 cards in the deck, or Rod Harrington is out of this tournament. He's pretty calm about it. River to come, and it's over. Ace high has taken the dart player off the board. And Gary Jones, Rod Harrington, first time playing poker in a live tournament ever. He just never got the hang of it, did he?
No, he actually started off mixing up the game and didn't seem to be afraid to actually put his chips in the middle and actually gamble in the very early stages. But then he seemed to just stop And from then on in, the only time he ever played, he just kind of limped in, was always very passive. And that's basically where he's gone wrong. He needed to be a bit more aggressive with whenever he found half a hand, just stick his chips in.
So Rod Harrington out in fourth. Here's the last hand again. Harrington forced all in, never made a pair. When the 5 cards came down, ace high won this pot. Giddens putting paid to the 9-dart Harrington.
The boredom, to be quite honest, is the thing you have to get over, I think. To sit there and just keep looking at your hands and chucking them in. I made a couple of mistakes, I think silly mistakes when I look back on it. One in one of the early hands and one of the last hands there against John McCurry. I just should have chucked him in and hopefully it blew him out.
The music has stopped. The circle is smaller. 3 players left, and Ed Giddens currently trailing with only 66,000. Matthew Stevens is your chip leader. He's got nearly half the chips in play. And John McCrearick, of course, in second position. He just had his stomach sucked out from Matthew Stevens, who took nearly half his chips. Cards out now. Blinds, 5 and 10,000 still. And in 3-player Texas Hold'em,
Pass.
the button is also first to speak when the blinds are out.
Call.
Ed Giddens folding his hand from that button there. And with a Jack 5, Matthew Stevens making up the blind. 10 and 10. The 2 heavyweights taking each other on. And Gary, with the history that these two have behind them right now, they've played a lot of big pots together. What is John McCrearick thinking?
I think we're going to actually find John McCrearick might go on the back foot for a little while. Everyone's seen that he bluffs, and I don't think he's going to be making any large plays quite so quickly. So my money would have to be on Matthew Stevens to take the control and
Check.
a bit of momentum for now.
A king and 2 trays and both players with the same hand here. A musical hand, the Jackson 5. It has gone check, check.
It's going to be a question of he who bets first wins.
Here comes the turn card, or the 4th card. No help to either player. And Matthew Stevens with a bit of a bluff now.
15,000.
15,000 into the 20,000
Pass.
pot. And McCrearick says, I can't compete. Well, Gary, you sussed it out completely. John McCrearick tightening down the hatches.
Yeah, you see, being caught for a bluff like that when you felt like you were absolutely flying is suddenly going to put you, give you a little bit of a downer, and John's now feeling a bit of the pressure, and he doesn't want to make a big play against Matthew Stevens. He's already been caught once.
Well, he's by no means out of this. 230,000 in chips. Plenty for McCrearick. If they were head up right now, he'd only have a 2-to-1 disadvantage.
Absolutely, but I still think Matthew Stevens has now caught the momentum, but John McCrearick, if he finds his voice, finds a few cards, he's going to be straight back in it. Ed Giddens needs to catch a good run of cards now to actually get back into the tournament. We're just going to have to see what happens.
Stevens first to speak from the button.
Raise to 25,000.
He'll
Pass.
stick a little pot in there. 25,000 on the ace-jack. Pass, pass. Give him the money. Good, strong automatic poker play. Ace on the button. Pop it up.
Absolutely. He's keeping the pressure on as well, extending his chip lead. By the time it gets down to heads-up stage, he could be in with quite a commanding advantage.
Try to be, as aggressive as I can, but it all depends on the cards. With me, I'm no pro.
How do the hand values change now that there's 3 players left? What kind of hands should people be raising with on the button?
Well, what tends to happen is when you go down from 6 players down to 3, you've got to imagine that there's now only half as many hands out there, so the hands that you're going to be up against are going to be a lot weaker. So you only need you could almost raise every time on the
Raise
button, because
20,000.
you've still got to find or be unlucky enough to walk into a hand that can play against you in the small and big blinds.
Well,
So,
McCrearick finding the
Call.
ace-3 there and raising 20,000. That's an example. That was plenty enough.
oh, absolutely. Ace-3 is quite a big hand when you're playing three-handed. You might not want to stick your entire stack in there, but it's certainly worth a raise.
Called by Matthew Stevens with the queen high, and the flop will be coming. This pot's 45,000 already. Stevens looking to pair up. And here's the flipper. 3 diamonds. John McCrearick's made the top pair. but it is a beware flop, although Stevens is